Okay. So starting off in riding horse. So this is the classical standing posture of both Qigong and Tai Chi and most of the martial arts. So apparently this posture came from India and it's the foundation of the martial arts, really. Just over time, strengthening the legs so that the upper body can be relaxed and responsive. So we're standing in the field of gravity. So if you just imagine it's raining, and it's like each raindrop is an image of gravity. It follows like a line of gravitational force or flux. Yeah? So we're just standing in that and trying to just get the spine to sort of align with it. I mean, the spine is quite curved, so it's a general thing. It's an average. So what we try to do when we stand like this is just to become mindful, so not be thinking about something else, and just soften the mind, relax the body. We say sink and relax, so we're sinking down. We're allowing gravity to pull us down and relax us. Now, if we continued allowing that, then we'd slowly be getting lower and lower. So what we're doing is supporting that sinking with our own legs. So our own legs are thrusting against the ground in order to push us up. Now, what we want to do is feel those two forces, the downward force of gravity and the upward force of our own legs, as two constant flows. So we want to feel them more like energy. As though there's a flow of energy coming up my body from the ground and another flow of energy coming down my body, which is induced by gravity, by the pull of the earth. So we call this central equilibrium. So where you have equilibrated the up and the down. So what tends to happen when we reach a place of seeming stillness is that we tend to freeze it, lock it, and then start thinking about something else. Yeah. So what we want to do when we're in this position is just not do that. So we have to be feeling the down all the time, feeling the up all the time, and using the mind to maintain a balance. It's a very delicate balance. It's a balance that trembles. So what tends to happen is you slowly begin to sort of harden, set. It's like a liquid that's beginning to set. So you have to be telling yourself all the time, relax, 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 so you can go back into that fluid state. Okay, so within this posture, we give ourselves like two postural instructions. One is that the head is suspended from above. So it feels like there's an energy going upwards from the top of the head. Almost like a beam, almost like a torch, like a flashlight, and it's shining upwards from the crown of the head. So not the fontanelle, which would tend to pull the chin up, but the crown of the head, which pulls the chin in. So the back of the neck is lengthening and pushing back into the collar of your shirt or whatever. And this is beaming upwards. And then the other direction is that your sacrum and the tailbone together are heavy. So they're hanging. So you're being pulled from here and you're hanging from here. So standing in this posture actually lengthens the spine. It doesn't compress it. That's why these two directions are important. And you just want to somehow relax all around here. So these two joints here, the hip joints, and then the two joints at the back where your sacrum joins onto your hip bones, that we call those the sacroiliacs. They have to really relax so that the sacrum can just hang down freely. So when you get it right, when all of this is relaxed, then it feels like the sacrum and the pelvis is just almost floating in a space that's created here. There's movement of the pelvis. You can rock it backwards and forwards, up and down. Yeah. So there's real mobility within this bone. So we don't want the legs to just clamp hold of it and just lock it. Everything has to have the potential for movement. So look, there's a lovely phrase, melt into the earth. So there's the feeling that you're melting, you're like wax that's slowly beginning to soften and slowly begin to drip. Yeah? So there's this feeling that your flesh is melting and dripping down your body. And then you can feel the thrust. So the thrust upwards from the ground is much more in the bones. So the ground is strengthening my skeleton, my bony structure, and the flesh is just dripping down. So shoulders are relaxed, elbows are heavy. And then just feel the structure. So you've got your upper body, you've got your spine with the ribs and everything, bearing down onto this platform here. So it's like the hip bones are like a platform. So you've got the spine with this triangular bone called the sacrum with a little coccyx, the little tailbone at the bottom. So this is like a wedge, yeah? And it sort of sits into the pelvis and sort of presses it apart because of the shape of that triangle. So my relaxation, my sinking is bringing me down. But once it gets to here, it branches out like this because it's pushing into each hip bone outwards. And what that will do is just make this bow-legged shape. It'll feel like you're relaxing more into the outside edges of the feet. So like this is opening here. So it really is like you're riding a horse. Yeah, so there's a big round shape. Imagine how big a horse is. And then the thrust from the ground, so your own strength bearing that, is doing the opposite. So if gravity is trying to cleave you in two and make you fall apart, then the strength from the ground is actually pushing back in and compressing this area. So again, we're just trying to become mindful of all the opposing forces so that we can keep them in some sort of balance. So instead of having a mind that's making choices, I would choose that over that. We have what we call a compassionate mind, which is one that can create compassionate spaces, one that can create a space within which different things can come in and get on and play, basically. So the mind becomes more like your embrace, more like, so this here, if you like, is like an image of your mind. It's just a large, open, warm, soft space. Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever had any psychotherapy, but what's interesting about a therapist, a good therapist, is that they don't really do anything. They just sort of sit there and smile and listen. But what happens is their listening is so good that they manage to create a space into which you can put anything you want to do, because you know it's going to completely accept what you say and be completely non-judgmental. Yeah? And you find yourself, as the person under therapy, saying things, giving voice to things that have been repressed for a long time. So you find yourself, so they're not only someone that you can tell things to that you can't tell anyone else, they're someone that you can tell things to that you can't tell to yourself. Yeah? And so this is what we want. Our mind is a mind that listens. So this is the main. So it's not a mind that sees. A mind that sees discriminates. Yeah? So I see the objects in my room separate from the things around them. When I listen, it's like anything can come into that listening space. That's what my mind becomes. It's also what my body becomes. So the body and the mind sort of harmonize and become one. This is the idea. So all the time I'm being pulled down, I'm sitting. You can just feel as you get tired, as the legs start screaming for mercy, it starts to get tight. And so you just have to tell yourself, okay, just relax. You have to sort of imagine, imagine you're showing this to a student and they were standing there. It was clear that they were beginning to struggle. So you'd be soft. You say, okay, just relax, just let everything flow out, just let the pain come in, don't fight it. They're exactly the same instructions you need to give to yourself. So you need to talk to yourself in a constructive way. So we're always talking to ourselves in a sort of destructive way. We're worrying. So we're just trying to turn that around in a way. So we sink and relax. The sinking splits the body in two, and then the energy coming up brings that back together again. Yeah? So it's a standing meditation posture. So in meditation, what you're trying to do is just quieten the mind. So you can quieten the mind by letting it become silent, or you can quite effectively quiet the mind by filling it with something that's you have some sort of control over, like a mantra or prayer. It's still quieting the mind in the sense that it's disciplining the mind. So we want two qualities in the mind. You want it to be quiet, relatively, so not thinking to itself, just here, in the moment, attending to this structure. And it has to be, so it has to be quiet, also has to be detached. So like not Buddhist non-attachment. It mustn't attach to things, yeah? And they're not quite the same thing. So detachment requires much, it requires you to have done work before you come to practice in a way. Okay? So to become quiet, you can just become quiet within the moment. But to be non-attached, you have to do a lot of work beforehand. Yeah? So when the mind becomes quiet and detached, then you just feel it just settling. It settles down into here. Now this area we call the dantia. So there's two levels, if you like, on which we're working. There's the external level, which is me relating to the earth, me relating through gravity to the earth. And then there's the internal level, which is our own energy, our own mind, quietening down and beginning to gather in here. So that is like my own gravitational center. So this is my center of gravity. So the earth is pulling every part of me downwards. And this point is pulling every part of me towards it. Yeah? So there's like this sort of, almost like a conflict. So again, we need to be mindful of both. So we need that external mind that can feel the forces impinging upon us from outside. And we need an internal mind that can feel the forces generated by our own being. So we've got head suspended, heavy sacrum, sink and relax. And then the legs are pushing up from the ground, which is coming into this area, squeezing it together and going up the spine and out to the top. And then inside, you've got this feeling of the mind sort of condensing. The Chinese love that image, like steam condensing into something much more dense, like a liquid, and just dropping down into this place. They say it becomes like a stone, like your belly becomes like a stone, so hard and cold. So that's the detached, quiet mind. You become your true weight. So when the mind is quiet, you're immovable, you're like a mountain. You're just standing here, and if someone pushes you, and if they really push, then you'd fall over. But there's a sense that you almost are oblivious to them, and so you're planted, you're rooted. Okay, so now let's just try doing, so that in a sense, the problem area is here. It's where the lower body and the upper body meet. So this platform of the hips and the down chair, which is pretty much in line with it. Yeah? So the down chair is like a meeting place. It's where your legs sort of stem from, if you like, energetically, and where your spine just drops down into. So the down chair it's actually inside your body, so it's not on the surface. It's just a little bit below the navel. Yeah. But really the whole area from your navel to your pubic bone. So this area is pretty much a hand, like the span of a hand, that area, that whole area is like the down chin area. Yeah. So what we want to do now is just exercise it. So we normally exercise it by just pulling the belly in, just pulling that in and then pushing it out. So let's just try that a few times. So just feel the down chin. So it's about, they say it's two and a half finger widths beneath the navel. Yeah? So it's pretty, so if you're wearing trousers with a belt, then it's often where the belt buckle is. This is why having, so in a sense, is all you have to do is just tighten your belt an extra notch and you've got something digging into your down chin so you can feel it. Yeah? And then just pull that point inwards, like you're trying to pull it towards your spine, and let the spine just bow backwards. And just feel the sort of that whole back area spreading. As this contracts and pulls into itself, the back will spread out. And then just reverse it. So now just feel that point pulled in, and now push it back out. Don't just let it relax, you've got to push. So now you're really leaning backwards and squeezing this point forwards, and then you pull it back in as far as you can, and then push it back out again. So everything that we do in Tai Chi is pretty much slow motion. And the quality of the movement is elastic. So just coordinate it with the breathing. So you normally breathe out when you contract the belly, and then breathe in here. So within that movement, try and feel the heartbeat. Yeah, so for me, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So there's the pump of the breath where that's more like an external thing. It's like you're interacting with the outside. You're bringing something outside in and then pushing something out. Whereas the heartbeat is much more internal. It's something that's happening within you. So it's a pump that pumps stuff around your body. So we just want to become aware of both pumps, if you like. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that count of 4 is actually very strong. So it's like the breath, it will tend to go sort of 4 heartbeats to an in-breath, 4 heartbeats to an out-breath. You know? It's like a mantra, like Om Mani Padme Hum. It's like four particles, 4 beats, and a lot of mantra are 4 beats. So you say it in your head on the in-breath, and then you say it in your head on the out-breath, and it's coordinating with the heart. So a mantra is actually registering the beat of the heart, whereas when you're focusing on the breath in meditation, obviously you're with the breathing. So here we want to just be aware of both. So I'm breathing out and hearing the heart. Okay, now just try and feel the return. Yeah, so as you expand here, it stretches something which then wants to return. So once I get to this point, which is quite extreme, all I have to do is relax and it will spring back. This is what we want to try to feel. And then I come in, and then I just come in even more than is comfortable. And then when I just relax, it just comes out by itself. It springs back. Yeah? There's a springiness to the edges. This is what we want to try and just feel. So I'm pulling in, I just squeeze it a bit, and then it will just naturally return. And then here I just force it a little bit, and it will just naturally return. Now just back to here. So now just come back to our initial posture. So sink and relax, just feeling gravity streaming through the body and just bringing you down into each leg. So it's like each side of the body is because of the posture, because of this spread base, each side of the body is trying to drift away from the other side. And then the thrust from the ground sort of brings you back together a bit. And then just feel those 2 rhythms. And so you're breathing all the time, obviously. So there's this in, there's this gentle in and out, so in out. It's really languorous and sort of slow. It's like the sea. It's like the sort of waves of the sea. And then within that, there's this boom, boom, boom. There's this drum. There's this insistent bang, bang, bang. So just imagine you were sort of standing on a trampoline like this and just really relaxed. Then you'd actually be going up and down with the heartbeat. So the heartbeat would be making you bounce into your own posture a little bit and bounce into the ground a little bit. So there's something in you. There's part of your body, part of your being that is forever knocking. It's like knocking on a door to see if anyone's home. So there's part of you that's just knocking on the ground, knocking on the air, knocking on anything. Yeah? So there's like an insistence to your body and your presence that is almost provoking some sort of interplay between yourself and the outside. Now let's just move. And so what we want to do is move, but we want to really sort of just look at the mind. Because what we want to do is be able to have what we call a disciplined mind. So a disciplined mind, a well-trained body, and a free spirit. And the free spirit requires the other two. So normally when we do something, our mind has already done it. Yeah? So if you decide to go and walk towards the door, then your mind is already on its way. And it's like you're being drawn, your body is just compelled to follow the mind. Now what that does, it gives you a false sense of lightness. There's a sense that the body doesn't need to work physically as hard as it should, because your mind has sort of cleared the way, if you like. It's a bit like exploring in the jungle. You know, you're sort of someone in the front cutting a pathway so that you can follow through. That's what your mind is doing all the time. Especially this sort of worrying mind that we're trying to sort of get some control over. Yeah. So what we want to do is just try and move, but without doing that. So I just want my mind just to be quiet, which is difficult when you're talking, and here. And then I'm just using my body, my legs, to just move from side to side a little bit. Just trying my best to keep this still, almost like instead of my mind moving in that direction first, my mind is really struggling to stop the movement happening. So my mind is just settled here, and it's really bloody minded, saying, no, you're not going to move. And then this leg has to just push through that and just squeeze you across. And this is just remaining detached. So this is the detachment, really. Yeah. So you're in this leg, and now I want to start moving in that direction. It's really difficult, because as soon as you tell this leg to move, the mind also goes there, because the mind knows what's meant to be happening. So we're just trying to keep the mind here and just not let it help. Yeah. So there's a saying in Tai Chi, don't resist, but don't assist either. And it's the assistance that actually ruins everything. It's your mind trying to help that ruins the energy, that actually stops energy. As soon as your mind starts helping, there's no need for energy. Yeah. So I'm trying to just stay here, and I'll just tell this leg, okay, squeeze. Yeah? Now, if I think in terms of moving in that direction, obviously my mind's going to go. So what do? Instead of thinking of this pushing me in that direction, I think of this pushing my foot into the ground. So I start straightening the leg, but very gently. So the word we use is squeeze. So I'm squeezing the muscles just to get it get the leg expanding. It doesn't feel that the leg is actually straightening, because obviously what's happening is the leg is straightening at the knee, and that is moving it. But it feels like the muscles are just squeezing around the bone, rather than this muscle tightening in order to straighten the leg. So I'm squeezing, not in order to get a movement in this direction, but in order to inject something, to squeeze something out of the bones and into the ground. So this is really important. So you're standing here, the mind is here, and I'm just squeezing that leg, and slowly I allow myself to move in this direction, trying my best to stay with that flow that I'm squeezing into the ground. And then once I'm here, I can just come to this leg. Okay. So my mind is here, it's heavy, it's like a stone. Okay. A cold stone, stone cold. Okay, now just feel the leg and just squeeze it and think in terms of injecting into the ground. Yeah? So my mind, if anything, is actually moving in that direction. My mind is much more with the flow of energy than it is with the movement of my body. Okay? So I'm squeezing, 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 and just. Yeah? So in actual fact, what happens is, as I'm squeezing and flowing in that direction, I'm actually sinking. Okay? So if I exaggerate that, so as I squeeze, I'm actually going down into the leg. Yeah? And somehow this movement sort of comes out of that, it appears, and takes me by surprise. And then I'm in this leg, and again, I just squeeze into the leg. And the more I push in that direction, the more my body reluctantly moves in this direction, because it's actually trying to be with the mind. It's trying to move in that direction. And then I just let myself turn, and I just squeeze the leg. And I'm trying to flow that way, but the body flows this way. And so this is the thing. The energy and the body move in different directions. So, and we just have to really struggle just to keep the mind with that movement in this direction. It's a bit like you're standing in a river, and the flow is all this way, and then you're just, part of you is with the flow, part of you feels it taking you, and then you just squeeze against that. But it's like the eyes are just looking in this direction, so squeeze. We just want to feel the quality of the movement. So as you squeeze and press and send your energy into the ground and under the ground in this direction, the movement that comes out of that is, it has a special quality. It's like a movement that's being torn out of an image that's sort of left behind. So I'm pushing the ground here, and that moves me here. And I just want to feel that tearing, and that sort of friction between the mind in this direction and the body in this direction. The body is being torn out of the body-mind, if you like. So it all requires you to be able to sink. It requires you to be able to feel gravity as a force that's almost oppressive. It's just pushing down into you so strongly. And it's difficult because it's, once you've done something, it's established a habit, and then you tend to ruin it. Just back to riding horse. So just feel gravity. It's almost suffocating. This feeling of sinking. It just feels like it just gets so close. So there's like two things from the outside that we sort of connect to and allow into our body. So one is gravity and the other is atmospheric pressure. So we just want to feel the pressure of the atmosphere, which is quite strong, sort of just pressing on your body. So often when I'm working with someone, if they're particularly distracted, which is understandable because often they've had to travel a long way to get to me. So their mind is still with the journey or whatever. Then what I'll do is just squeeze them, just put my hands and just squeeze their skin against the bone, almost like I'm trying to massage the bone through the flesh, to just bring them back to their body in a visceral, physical way. And so that's what atmospheric pressure should be doing. So if you can quieten the mind, then you can just feel the air, the atmosphere pressing into you, trying to pierce the skin and get into your bones. And then you can feel the opposite of that coming from within you. There's balancing there. There's a sense of expansion. There's a sense that you're pushing against that. You don't want to be oppressed. Yeah? There's part of you fighting all the time. So you're fighting gravity with the strength of your legs, and you're fighting atmospheric pressure with something inside you that's just squeezing into your skin. And then that will emanate out of you. So there'll be like a draft coming from you. Okay, so now let's just move it a bit. So let's just go down and send the hands down to the knees and then up. Bring the hands up to the forehead and then just bring the energy down. Okay. So what we're feeling here is that split, the bifurcation from the spine into the hip bones and down into the ground. Yeah? So from here, it's splitting. You're splitting into two, obviously, two different legs. So you just go down as far as the knees. You can let yourself lean forwards a little bit, but you're struggling not to. Once you get to the knees, just bring up like you're just trying to bring really large armfuls of energy until the middle of the palms are facing this point here. And then just hold it a second. Relax the shoulders. And then you just bring the elbows out to make this sort of tent shape with your hands. And then just bring it down until you've brought that energy down into your dantian. So as it comes into the dantian, there's a feeling of the dantian tightening a little bit. So that's very important, the tightening. It's not something that you want to exaggerate too much, but for a man, it feels like you're sort of pulling your balls up. The perineum is tightening, the sphincters, front and back, are tightening. So you're just creating a really sort of watertight foundation, lower diaphragm, to hold the dantian, which is like a little cauldron, like a pot. And then from there, you just let it branch out again. Yeah. But again, just pull in here a bit to actually spring all of this open. And so the more this tightens locally, the more the sacroiliacs will open and it will round out from the back. This is what we want. So down to the knees. And then here, what we want is to come up, but not by doing this, not by straightening the legs. If anything, the legs sink down even more as I bring my hands up. Yeah? So there's no respite, I'm afraid, from the sinking. And then elbows out. And then just slowly down. Just tighten the dantian a little bit as you come towards it. Feel the dantian hungry for this energy. It's sucking it in. So the anus is tightened a bit. The sphincter here that stops you from peeing. This whole area is just pulling into itself. And then that allows the area just beyond it to release. And so these little pockets here have just released. Yeah? The sacroiliacs have released. And again, so go down until the hands reach the knees. And then just to come up, just let the sacrum drop down. So the sacrum drops down and that brings the arms up. The great thing about these Zoom lessons is I can't hear you, so if you're screaming, that's fine. And it's good. It's good to vocalize. It's good to scream, shout, curse, recite. Okay, so one down, pray. And then I just let my sacrum just drop down, and that brings up the hands. Yeah. Okay, so in Qigong Tai Chi, you see the hands moving, but they're not. It's not moving from the arms. Yeah? So I'm inclining forwards and sinking down here, and that's getting my arms to move down. And then instead of doing this with my arms, I just sit down. I just sit down and let that bring the arms up. That's great. And if it gets too difficult on the legs, then you can just come up into a shorter stance. You know, it's a bit macho. So down, and then I just sit. I just sit into the posture. So just feel the heartbeat. So as soon as you settle into something, you bounce. Do, 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 do. If you can't feel your heartbeat, then you just count. You don't have to feel it. It's not really a heartbeat. It's a different quality. it's like the energy pumping rather than the blood, if you like. Yeah. And then down again. And then just I sit down, and that brings my arms up. It's good, 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 good. So it's just feel how useful the pain is. The pain, it's like we're trying to generate this special energy that we call spirit, which is like a fire. So something in, so, when you get the other energies gathered and condensing, then you get an intensity that it's almost like a shake. And that's just spirit. And spirit is frightening, especially if you're not used to it, because it changes everything. Yeah. So, wow. Sit down. Whoa. Yeah, one more. Right. Okay. So now let's just come up from that. So well done. You've survived riding horse. Okay, so now let's just try with some gentle Tai Chi. Let's just try from here. So just like a shoulder width between the legs. Okay, now let's just move from leg to leg. But instead of doing it the way we did, which was pressing the ground, which is basically working the leg that your weight was in, we're going to just break the other leg. So the main concept in Tai Chi is what we call yielding, which is just accepting the other person without resisting them, without going against them. So you yield and then you attack. You allow the person in and then you throw them back out. So as they come in, everything bends, the arms bend, the legs bend, and as you throw them out, everything straightens. Yeah, so this is basically Tai Chi. So what we'd like is, so what they say in Tai Chi is keep to a yielding mind. So the mind is always in yielding phase. And every now and then, sort of momentarily, that yielding mind just breaks open and a burst of pure aggression flies out, which is what we call spirit. Yeah? And it takes you by surprise. It's like you're being provoked and provoked and provoked, and eventually you just have to hit them. Yeah. And you don't choose when it happens. It's like a trigger. Yeah. Okay, so what we want to do is, what we'd like to do is to move around using the yielding mind, so when we're straightening and pushing ourselves like this, which is straightening the bent leg, then we're basically attacking. So what we'd like to be able to do is just bend the leg. So I want to just bend the leg and just let it pull me into it. You see? And then I bend this leg and it pulls me across here. So this leg bends and it slowly pulls me into this leg, and then this leg bends. And so instead of pushing yourself around, you're pulling yourself. So pull. So you're just drawing yourself from leg to leg. Yeah. So this leg is quite straight now. So I just allow the knee to go out, and that bends the leg and moves me across. Yeah. And the other leg, so now this leg is going to bend. And this leg is trying its best not to help. This is where you need the disciplined mind. So this leg bends, and my mind, if anything, is heavy, and it's just trying to stay here. And so this really, the bending has to be really effective to actually pull me across. Yeah. And then this one just bends, so bend. Yeah, so this leg is yielding into fullness. So as it yields, it fills up. Yeah, so the emptiness that's in this leg is being filled up with my weight. And now this is the empty leg. So that just breaks, it folds. And then that allows it to fill up with the weight. But by the time my weight gets in here, I'm in the foot, I'm in the ground. I'm not sitting on a tense leg. It's like the leg has pulled the ground and me together. And then the same thing here. I pull the ground with my foot, and that's pulling the ground up and pulling me towards it. So by the time my weight is in the leg, I'm actually with the ground. The leg has almost disappeared. And then pulling here. Yeah, so the bending of the leg is doing two things. It's pulling the ground upwards towards me, and it's pulling me across towards it. And there's a meeting. It's like a meeting halfway. So if I was to use this leg to push myself into this leg, like this, then this leg is sort of reluctantly taking the weight. And it's like it becomes like a barrier between my weight and the ground. I can very much feel this strong leg holding me away from the ground. This is the way we normally are. Yeah? Because ever since we were tiny, what we've wanted more than anything is to be on that level of the adults. Yeah? And so when we stand up, we're almost standing on tiptoes all the time to try and get up there. And so we forget what it means to actually be with the ground. So if I push from here, it's a bit like throwing a stone, and it sort of lands. So I'm pushing myself and it lands on this leg. Now, when I pull with this leg, I'm pulling myself down into this rising foot, so it's very different from just pushing and landing, yeah, to actually pulling and meeting. So this is what we want to try and feel. It's subtle. It's subtle. It requires you just to be able to control the body so that you don't use the leg that wants to push. I'm pulling. I have to keep everything really slow. Yeah, it doesn't matter how good you get, you're always trying to cheat. Yeah? So, so both of these ways of moving are important. It's just that this is the one that we don't normally do, so we need to practice it a bit more. So I'm pulling myself with this bending leg. Yeah. So I'm pulling that ground up, and it just meets sort of round about here. And then I'm really sort of in that leg, and then this leg can sort of come up, relatively easily. Okay? So I've sunk down. The feeling is that you've dropped a level. Yeah. So you've dropped a level, and that means that you're just in a more lively space, a more sort of earthy space where there's more energy. So here, pulling, and just allow this foot to come up. Yeah? So just feel the tail sort of under. Yeah, so the pulling with the leg. So if I pull with this leg and I don't let myself move, then you can see that what's happening is this is really being stretched by the force of the pull. Yeah? So this is being pulled apart. So what that does, it stimulates me inside to contract in the right way. Yeah? So the more I try and pull this apart with my legs, the more my belly will hold on to itself. And then that's exactly the right elastic quality that we want in the Dantian especially. If I'm pushing myself with the leg, then this is being compressed by that movement, which then forces the Dantian to try and expand to balance that. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is just get this contracting sort of springy, like elastic. When you pull elastic, it's just pulling back all the time. Yeah. It never stops pulling back. So this is the quality here. So I'm pulling the elastic here, which is forcing it to spring back into itself. And what that does, it sort of just conditions this area and teaches it how to hold on to me, how to make me really organize about this place. Yeah. So it becomes a center that's actually holding every cell in my body and pulling it towards it in this sort of springy, pumping, breathing, elastic way. So pull, and I move across. I settle into this layer, and I just pull here. And just feel this being wrenched and pulled. So the leg bends. So what does it mean, the leg bending? It means the knee going out. The knee has a life of its own. The knee is wayward. It's like a naughty child, the naughty knee. It's wanting to drift outwards all the time, wants to go exploring. And it's that. So the knee leads. The knee leads to movement. The spirit is with the knee. So the hip is wanting to pull back all the time. The hip is sort of a bit frightened, so it wants to stay in. So these two hips are sort of pulling towards each other, right down to a point just beneath the genitals. Yeah, and the knee is just trying to pull out. And then this knee. Whoa. So the feeling is, it's like there's an image of myself that's already established itself on the foot. Yeah? So the feeling is, it's like there's an image of myself that's already established itself on the foot. Yeah? So the feeling is, it's like there's an image of myself that's already established itself on the foot. Yeah? So the feeling is, it's like there's an image of myself that's already established itself on the foot. Yeah? and then the spirit just calls me across. There's a spirit here that's calling me to join it. Yeah. So when you're working like this, it's like that you have a presence outside yourself that's slightly ahead of time, that's calling you all the time. This is very useful when it comes to dealing with another person, because you can just allow that spirit aspect of yourself to be with the other. Yeah. If you're always coming out of yourself, then you're just a bit ignorant. Yeah. It's like you're clashing with the world all the time. So here, let's say the other person is coming towards me here quickly, yeah, and I just need to get to them. Then part of me is already with them. Yeah. There's this sense that this me has just injected a spark of spirit in that direction, and then I can just, you see, I'm pulling them in, and that pull is also pulling me towards them. Yeah. So I'm not going against them at all. I'm just welcoming. I'm sending out a welcome, an invitation, and as they roll into me, I roll into them. Yeah, so forth. So this is perfect for the martial artist. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're sinking your probity like back into something. Yeah. So you reach out, something appears here and pulls you towards it. Yeah. Just feel it working on this area. Yeah. So what we need in Tai Chi is this, what I call a suspicious mind. Yeah. So part of me is just completely with this embrace, with this offer of myself to the other in order to create this coming together. But another part of me is a bit suspicious that there's actually more to the picture than meets the eye. And that's the part that feels this churning away inside me. So I don't hold part of myself back from this. You have as many minds as you want. So I'm with this, but I'm also here. So one. And we just stretch the moment. So that moment of the knee leaping out and my spirit leaping out, and then it's starting to pull, we're just really stretching that moment into the most painful slow motion we can manage. All the time, the mind like a stone in the dancing. See how difficult it is? Yeah. So this sort of imploring, welcoming heart, that's not the mind. Yeah. The mind is here, that's your heart. Yeah. That's your heart reaching out. All the time, the mind is here, cold and detached, couldn't give a fuck. Yeah. And yet your heart is completely offering. Yeah. So outside sweetness and light, and inside as cold as the Arctic wind. Yeah. You're just cold and cruel, detached. Yes, and it's obviously you need both of these minds. If you want to expand into the world, then you need another part that's holding you together, that's stopping you from falling into pieces. Yeah? So this is just Taoist work. We're just trying to feel the two components of the duality and really get them playing together. Let them separate so that they can play rather than stick together, because then you just get mediocrity. You just get an average. Part of me is out there pulling. This is pulling the ground up towards the heart as the heart is being pulled towards the ground. So this shape, this sort of holding the ball shape, this is pure Tai Chi, the sense that you're pulling something up out of the ground from this foot, and then another part of you is slipping underneath that. Yeah. So your movement, your sunk movement, is forcing the ground to emit its energy, and then you scoop underneath and gather it. Yeah. So one, and this, my teacher used to love this shape, this holding the ball. So one hand, this hand is with the energy that's rising, and then the other hand is slipping underneath that and cutting it. That's one. So it just becomes this sort of wavy hands in the clouds, as does everything basically. So we're just trying to get it to come from that knee moving out. And it all depends on just your ability to just control the body. So a well-trained body. And discipline the mind. As you keep the mind here, don't let the mind get too involved in the movement. The spirit is involved in the movement. The spirit is doing the movement. The heart is involved, but the mind is detached. It's down here. So, so something over here, and I just let it come up. And so it's this hand is with my front, if you like. This hand, I'm sort of, it's my back. And so here, you see, I'm turning this way, if anything, to let this hand go out blind, and then it will then, if you face the world square, then you frighten it, and it disappears. And so I need to sort of go into the world sideways, and then I can then very gently come round to face it. It's like a fisherman. You're sending out a net, got no idea what's under there, and then you pull it in to see what you've grabbed. That's what we're. So in Tai Chi, you're just becoming a fisherman with men. Micromanage self-work. So you're just sending out something, and then just pulling yourself towards it as you pull it towards you. So one knee, all this tightening all the time to stop you from splitting up. Okay. And then back into lying place. So really sort of sitting down into this bowl. Just hugging something. So the Danchen should really feel quite toned now, so like it's pulling into itself. If your Danchen is sort of flopped out and expanded too much, it just means that these two parts of your body, the upper and the lower, aren't really connected. One is sitting on the other, but they're not sort of coordinated. So you need to sort of pull this in and let the back stretch a bit, stretch upwards, but also fan out. So this embracing shape is all the way down your spine. It's like you've got all these ribs coming out of your spine all the way down, and even down the legs. You know. So there's a column that you're embracing with your whole body, not just your arms. So you need to pull this in a little bit to sort of squeeze back into the kidneys and get it to come round. Great. Okay, well, let's leave it there, start coming in. And now just bring the foot up. Straighten the legs so they're almost straight. Yeah, so if riding horse gets difficult, you can just come to this, like prayer posture with the feet together. But feel as though it's still like riding horse in the sense that your knees are still going out a little bit. You're still settling into the outside edges of the foot. It's just much smaller, it's more sort of compressed here as well as in the legs. Yeah. It's got the same head suspended and this heavy sacrum dropping down through the legs. So what my teachers are saying is when you finish the session, just come back to stillness and just dedicate the work to some end, to some person or some project. Or so you're just bringing it back to some sort of focus. And then just bring the hands down, place them on the belly, and just pull the belly in a little bit. Just a little bit of pressure in towards the spine. So as soon as you put your hands on this area, it becomes much easier to feel. So just feel the warmth of your hands just going into the dantian tends to be cold. The heart is warm, dantian is cold. So just feel yourself warming the dantian up a bit. And with your hands, just feel the activity inside the dantian. So this sort of stringy quality, there's always a slight pump there. Okay, so let's leave it there.